Welcome to Odd Band Pipecast, the premier pipe band podcast.
Nice.
Did it? Were you reading that off of something? Are you cheating?
I have practiced it a little bit, but I did radio when I was in college, so we had
Okay.
I actually did a lead-in for one of our shows. So yeah, no, completely was used to that. But no, yeah, have practiced. It was something I thought about.
Good. So he's prepared. He's studied.
Yeah, there you go.
So for all of our listeners who are tuning in this week, this is our guest this week is Mr. Ryan Balchuck, who is, among other things, he is the Adjudication Chair for the Western United States Pipe Band Association Music Board. So that's a mouthful. And he'll talk a little bit about the other things that he does, but we thought it would be really fun to bring him on and talk about the music board and about what he does and all kinds of stuff. So get prepared to learn about all that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being on the show. This is it's just after the AGM when we're recording this, so I'm not saying, everything's done, but you kind of have room to breathe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the AGM's a really big push to lead into it, but I think the AGM itself is and it sucks that it was really, I guess it sucks, and it was a good thing that it was online this year. We had the biggest attendance for the AGM meeting this year, and that's for obvious reasons. It made it a little bit easier for people to attend. But it's so nice to finally get to a non-games, even though you have a lot to do when you get to the AGM, but to get to sit down with people and to just be able to discuss, because most of us are leaders in our own bands, and so during the games you're just everywhere. And normally we would stay if we're going to Pleasanton or something, you're at all at different hotels, so you may not get to just sit and chat with somebody like you would here. This is a chance to sit down and talk, and absolutely there's a lot that gets done in those pub committees later at night type of thing. Like we do get a lot of work done, but it's a good chance to not bring your kilt with you, still do a lot of piping stuff, but yeah, you don't have to bring all your gear, and you can still just enjoy people's company.
You don't have to spend hours tuning.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
All right, let's get on some questions. You'll kind of introduce yourself through these questions. We'll get to know a little bit about you and what you do.
So, how'd you get into piping?
That's always a good story. So I was 5 years old. I went to a games. I'm from Colorado. Originally, my hometown is Pueblo. I live in Denver now, so it's about 2 hours south of Denver. And not a lot of bagpiping going on in that city. It's got a great culture to it. It was a mix. There's a big steel mill there. So, I mean, you have a bunch of different ethnicities down there. So Italians, the Sicilians that do all that, like I said, not necessarily bagpiping people when it comes down to it. So, but my grandfather was born in Canyon City, which is just to the west of Pueblo by about half an hour or so. And we went to the one games that they had. They never had another games. This was the one shot. And I just remember saying I wanted to do it, right? I want to play the bagpipe, feel that. And I remember my parents kind of chit-chatting, things that kind of remember. When you're in preschool, obviously, you always do those boards of what you want to be in the future. And they're like, well, he's a firefighter this week and he was an astronaut last week. So let's just kind of wait this out, and see how this goes. But thankfully, we kept seeing different players from the Pikes Peak Highlanders who were in Colorado Springs, and I just kept bringing it up. So finally at 7, my parents bit the bullet and started driving me twice a week to Colorado Springs. I mean, like I said, my family's been absolutely dedicated to what I was doing earlier when I was younger. Because I was always somebody that wanted to play basketball. I didn't necessarily want to practice. I'll put it that way. So it was always kind of a push initially to get that to happen. But it basically started from seeing that one games at one time. And I was able to join the Highlanders in like 92, 93 as a 7-year-old, and kind of work up from there. I didn't get to the pipe. It took a while. Like I said, that practice thing might have been a big issue, but I got my first set of pipes when I was 10. and finally got into the competition band and I think I started soloing around 11, 12, but got in the competition band finally when I was 13. And I think since then, just been consistently going up, never really blazing a fast star or anything like that. But just consistently kind of working my way up from there to now that I'm an open piper. So that's kind of like I said, it's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, Colorado, my background comes from being in Pikes Peak. Starting out, that's where I learned all the fundamentals. And then early 2000s, joined an upstart band called Colorado Sky that was really good in competition. We did really well in California, went to Montreal and Maxville. We won Montreal in grade 4 the day after Maxville. We got second at Maxville the day before.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. I think that was the thing when you're in a non-Celtic center, sometimes you have to have events like that to kind of be like, oh, we actually are doing okay. Like, you know, you don't really know how things are going. And so it was, instead of being kind of overly confident, I would say, a type of thing, we were really on the other side of like, well, you know, we're just going to go in and try to do the best we can. And we're confident about how we're playing, but you never really know how those results are going to shake out. And so to lose to the RAF Trenton band that had been second 3 years before, or 3 consecutive years, they were losing their pipe major to a military transfer. There was just too much of a Cinderella story going on there. But to be a band from Colorado that came in with 9 pipers and got second is really a big deal. But yeah, did that. Colorado Sky eventually folded, joined up with Seamus Coyne and James J. Coyne for a little bit. And he's continued to be an awesome mentor to me. And then we started Queen City in 2012. Out of just a quartet at a mock, we do a mock contest right before the contest season starts called the Smackdown, and it's at a pub. You can be in your kilt, and you can play whatever you want. It's just to get everybody out of their garages and their houses, and you know, just kind of get started, right? So it's on YouTube. You can see it. It's not great. You know, we had 4 players that just kind of got together, but luckily it got everybody excited, and they're like, hey, we really do want to do something different. We want to, you know, play in this, you know, what you guys got going on. So since 2012, I've been a founding member, you know, and I've been a member of Queen City here in Denver.
Cool. Yeah, our next question is going to be, what do you do now in the pipe band world? But I guess you kind of already explained that. Is there anything else you do?
Yeah, so I became an adjudicator a couple years ago, and went through all the shadowing, did all that. So I'm now an adjudicator for B panel, for B-Bruck, light music, and for bands, not for ensemble. You have to have a little bit more time in the seat, and that makes sense because ensemble judges usually are the ones that decide the contest, because the rest of us kind of mix it up. So your ensemble person usually is the number that will change that for everybody. But I've enjoyed being an open piper. Like I said, that took some time. I went to open, and after winning grade 1, the WUSPBA Championship in 2014. So I think 2015 was my first open season. So teacher to several students. I think that's probably one of the best things I like. Now that I'm a young kid, I've now my youngest student at 13 is getting his first set of pipes tomorrow. So
Yay.
I'm actually more excited about that. Like that, you know, watching them achieve what they're looking for. So I know his mom was like, can we wait a little bit? And I'm like, well, you don't start playing to be a practice chanter player. You want to be a bagpiper. So
yeah,
let's get him the bagpipe. So no, I'm excited about that. So that's kind of what I do now, besides being on the music board.
that's exciting. I love those moments when you see your students like doing really well, and you're like, oh, I remember your first lesson. You didn't know how to hold the chanter, I guess.
Yeah, I got a little bit of that when I was in college. I taught at the Colorado Youth Pipe Band in Denver, and to see those kids now. I mean, they're probably in their mid-20s, so it definitely makes me feel older. You know, because I don't feel like I'm that old yet. But it's like you said, it's just been so fun to watch their progression in bands, solos, or just in life in general.
Yeah, that's cool. So now moving to the good stuff. No.
Yeah. So what does the WUSPBA Music Board do, and what do you specifically do on the board?
It's a good question. It's the music board. To me, it's kind of a half mix of people think it's like a secret society or it's kind of untouchable, right? And but we have members from each geographic region. So for your guys' area, Jeff Anderson is your music board representative. When I joined the music board actually in 2014, there was 2 members from each branch. And since then, we kind of noticed that because our idea was like, if we have more people, we can get more done, like do more work. And I think we kind of found out that that's not always the case. You can't have too many members because when you get on a conference call, 3 or 4 people talk, right? And the other 8 were kind of quiet because they didn't know, like, do I jump in now? Do I not?
Yeah.
So it's much smaller music board now at this point. But I think in terms of kind of what we do, most people probably don't know we have a couple different functions that we do. Probably the most well known is our grading function, the regrading and all that we do. And that's because I think people are going to do it with it as a soloist and a bandsman. So you're going to see it on both sides. But we do a ton for the adjudication stuff. That's for where I'm sitting. We run the entire process. From basically seeing if a person, when they apply, meets the minimum qualifications to be an adjudicator, to doing their shadow judging, getting them a mentor, going through all those learning processes to then get them to take the exam. We work with them to get that exam graded, and then we then recommend them to the executive committee, and the executive committee will then vote to put you on to the panel or not. But even after that, we continue to work with them on their sheets because all of us are, you're brand new and you're still learning at that point. So we still, like I said, we do quite a little bit. And now we've got that continuing accreditation program that we're rolling out for judges to help them with more activity, keep them sharp, do a couple professional development opportunities as we go through. Like this last weekend for the AGM, we had Bob Worrell teach us a little bit about how to judge an online contest. As obviously those are going to probably be prevalent for the next year or two, or even after we probably get back to full games. What are some of the challenges he's seen, and how can we kind of combat that? So obviously some really cool topics, and those will all count. But we, like I said, for the judging, we do quite a little bit. But we used to do education, but I think you're starting to see, especially after the AGM this weekend, that it's been a really good move to kind of move that to what's a newly formed education council. And we do sit on that. We have a member, but it's not like all ours type of thing. And I think that's really benefited because they're doing a really good job. And there's a new youth education council that's for the 19 and unders. They seem to have a clinic every 3 weeks with somebody that's a superstar, right? I think Andrew Lee's coming up, and they get to learn about all kinds of different topics, how to maintain their bagpipes and things like that. But you get to learn that from somebody that is at the top of their game. So that's kind of cool as well. The other thing that people probably don't know that we do is anytime a music-related topic comes up during the year. One of my favorites is it seems like every year for grade 4 players for soloists, we always get told when you play your solo area, you have to have 32 bars of music. And every single time somebody's like, well, you probably should put that somewhere. I'm like, well, it's in the rules. Like, where else do you want us to put it? Like, how to publicize it. But inevitably, almost every year we have to reply to at least a couple brand new grade 4 soloists. Because a tune like Going Home comes up like 4 bars short. So unfortunately, that's a tune we all use to kind of teach and bring up, but it doesn't meet the 32 bars worth of music. So there's things like that always seem to come up. I think the executive committee always gets questions from bands and soloists throughout the year, just in general. Another one of my favorite ones was, can you guys define what is a part? Because when we had a March medley, it was, you had to go through so many parts of music, I think. And one band actually asked us, and we got it, and it says, can you guys define what is a part?
Oh.
And for us, we're kind of like, well, it's the double lines at the end of the music, in the composition. And really what it was coming down to, we asked them kind of where they were coming from, was if you play a March medley that's all 4 4s, there's no repeats, you're straight through, you're done. There was no time component to it. So we were kind of like, well, you can do that. If you feel like you have a band that can't quite make it and you're just doing straight 4 4s, it's kind of we're not going to regulate that. We don't want to do more regulation, to be honest. Like I said, we don't have a lot of time. But we're like, if you want the judges to hear different time signatures, 3/4, 2/4, then that's your option. But and if other bands do well with it and you just play straight 4/4s, that's your kind of your issue. So I think it's you don't see the adjudication stuff because that's really obviously just kind of to the judges list. But like all those little questions that probably get asked and then pushed up to the executive committee, we're kind of the consultants on that. We can give recommendations back on things like that.
That's really interesting. Do you have any input on what, I've heard this asked in various ways, what tunes are usually played at like mass bands? Because I've heard, there's a list of, I've never seen this, but I've heard, rumor says, legends have told, that there's a list of tunes that the music board recommends that a band knows in order to participate in mass bands, or something to that effect. I could be wrong.
That is true. We did add a couple years ago. There was a 2/4, I think it's Brown Hair Maiden. I remember we were at Costa Mesa and we were the first band to come, because Kevin Conquest wanted all the grade 2 bands in WUSPBA to go out together because we were all there. And so he's like, I want you guys to all come out in the first flight. So we're all excited. And I just remember when he called that off, because he's like, well, it's part of the list. Like the entire band's like, how's that go? They're like turning back behind everybody and they're like trying to, finger along. You're like, okay, it goes like this, type of thing. So, but yeah, so we do handle that list. And because of, I think some questions for grade 4 players for PBREC, because a lot of them are like, well, we don't know kind of what to do and what's in our level. We kind of took a page out of WUSPBA and the Pipe Band and Pipers of Ontario. And we do have a recommended list of PBRECs for grade 4 players. So we do kind of move tunes in and out. But yeah, mass bands, we really, are you guys just looking for Green Hills to go away? Like, is that what you guys are asking? Or?
Yeah, no, I was curious because.
Yes, that's what we're asking.
Yes. Well, because you always hear the same tunes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been asked by people before, whether they're students or whatever, like, well, what do I need to know to play mass bands? And as a drummer, that's like a pretty easy question to answer because you know what your mass band's time signatures are. But I was like, I generally know because I've been in a band for long enough. I know what they're probably going to call mass bands, but I'm always wondering, like, what if they call something like, I don't know, what if they call Dawning of the Day and like
right.
The band doesn't know that?
Yeah, it's a good point. If you go to another association, like if you go, like we were talking about Montreal or Maxville, they go in waves actually because they have so many bands at those contests. So you're usually like wave 1, 2, 3 type of things like that. They'll play 6/8. They'll play different tunes that they get in that list. So you do have to pay attention to where you're going. So if you're going out, like we went to Chicago the last couple of years, you have to know what that association has on their mass band list. So, but you have your steady ones like the 3/4s, 4/4s. I think it's when we were talking about beginners, you have to remember your common denominator. Like all the rest of us would love to play all kinds of different tunes, but remember, mass bands is obviously for the crowd. Love you or hate it, they're the ones that obviously help us continue to have this art form because they're paying that ticket price. So, and for them, they love it. Like we're like, oh God, but like I've had friends and family that come just for that, right? I'm like, I competed in the morning. Like, didn't you want to come see me? No. So they want to come see the mass band. So they really do enjoy that. And I think the other thing is for those beginning players, right? That's what are they going to know? We're teaching them, Scout and the Brave, Rowan Tree, Green Hills, Valzor. I know I get where you're coming from, but it's kind of one of those things that I think as a group you kind of have to think back to like what was the cool thing. Even though you probably started in messes, you guys are probably a little bit different, but I think there was like a golf tee in my chanter or something, right? There was no real read going on. I was just out there as a 9-year-old, looking like an idiot, but loving it, right? So, I think you're going to see some normal tunes in there and that we usually put. But yeah, I think last year or a couple years ago we added a couple extra to the list.
Yeah. And it is kind of like going back to your saying newer players. I mean, it would be overwhelming if you go to a mass band and you don't know like what they're going to call. But if you have that list and like, okay, I know all of these tunes, I can handle that, then that's not a big deal. So
yeah, and that list is on the WUSPBA website or any association website. So like if I'm going, like I said, if we were going to Chicago and Midwest, I looked up what was on their tune list and I learned it. So like Balmoral and a couple other 3/4s that I don't necessarily play all that often. but just in case they call it out, wanted to be at least a participant, type of thing. So
Yeah. So for our listeners, if you don't want to play Green Hills and Mass Bands anymore, this is your guy to talk to. No, no, it's interesting. It's funny because I never spend that much time on the WUSPBA website, and we did an episode where we read the contest rules, and I think that's very true. A lot of people
don't fight the judge. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, the rules are online. Oh, I can read those. I don't know. Funny things when you do this long enough that you forget, like, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's important as a soloist, though. Even though NAPABA, the Association of North American Pipe Band Associations, and I went to that summit a couple of years ago when it was at Winter Storm. They do a good job of kind of talking across associations to kind of make it somewhat consistent, but there's still some changes going from place to place. So even like I said, for me as an open player, I can't remember if I needed an additional 6/8, or there was something that was a little bit different in their rules when we went to Chicago or to Maxville or something like that. So you have to keep up on that as well. So don't get caught by something like that. Or if you have to have your music printed, like Winter Storm, I definitely was that guy that did not have you're supposed to print off all your prereqs, all 4 of them, and have multiple copies. And I got told in the final waiting room, they're like, where's your stuff? I'm like, what stuff? What are you talking about? And all of a sudden I'm running to the printer. I'm not tuning. I'm trying to print off all these tunes from my email, right, to then go run. So believe me, I didn't get disqualified, but I actually just walked up onto the stage and just started playing and started my back to the judges, because I was like, if they're going to make me DQ, they're going to have to come up and tap me and tell me to walk off. But since then I've been a model citizen. I print those off for Winter Storm.
Lessons learned. All our listeners, study the website.
Rules are important.
So I know you said there's one member of the music board for each branch of the association, but how does that work, like membership in general? Are there term limits? How are people added? Do you just kind of stay on until you don't want to do it anymore?
That's a good question, because I think people don't know that. So because the executive committee gets voted on, right? They have their positions that roll every other year essentially. So but the music board, essentially the president gets selected. And so that's usually by the president and the executive committee. And usually usually the president has a little bit more say in that. So our current music board chair is Ken Sutherland from Prince Charles in San Francisco. So he gets selected by the president. And I think that's kind of important, because the president or whoever's filling in for the president has to deal with, like I said, these conference calls with other associations or the judges or things like that. So you do want somebody in that position that has that kind of clout in their background. I know Ken would kind of blush if I said that, but at the same time, he has that ability to communicate, right? You're looking for somebody that is a leader in that sense. And then after that, the music board chair gets to select kind of how they're going about it. But I think the president and them obviously have a conversation how that goes. So, but for example, I think when I came on, the music board chair was Andrew Morrow, who was a past president. He's from the Wasatch and District Pipe Band, Salt Lake area. So yeah, he wanted to try some different things and was able to go there with me. But I came on because somebody came off. We had our music board chair at that point would have been Andrew Trimble, who's from Colorado, from Carter Springs. That's where I met him. And he just had some personal business to take care of, right? You just get too busy, you do some of that. So he came off. And like you were saying, how do you get kind of put on? Well, you want somebody that's not just, I think, a leader or somebody that's recognized as having talent or the ability to communicate, and obviously someone you can feel comfortable with being on the music board from other other parts of the association. The lady from Colorado, Lisa Nelson, actually, because she says, hey, we're losing Andrew or we're losing Andy. What are we going to do? And Jeff Mann's like, we already talked about it and we're going to pick up Ryan. So I didn't even know about that, but it was the Utah and California group that actually said, we would like Ryan to be a part of the music board. So it wasn't like they kind of got a Colorado delegation together and said, hey, who do we want to kind of be a part of it? And I think that was something that was difficult for me when I started, because I'm like, am I a representative, like a U.S. representative, to the Senate or something like that? Am I bringing other things to the table? Am I kind of a consultant? Do I just kind of give of my ideas and then we kind of come to a consensus recommendation on those? It was confusing to me as well when I started there. But to answer your question, there's no term limits right now. We have talked about that to try to get some movement in the music board and different opinions. But so far, during my tenure, the last 6 years, we've actually had quite a little bit of, there's been some continuity, but like a lot of turnover. So we've been kind of reluctant to kind of say, hey, we want to move people off, because we're also trying to keep the whole hit by a bus theory when you're at your job, right? You always try to document things and make sure the next person knows what's going on. So yeah, that I think we've really kind of tried to push that. Like we got a person leaving this year, Glenn Cavito, a professional drummer, is and a pretty good piper at that too, is leaving. He moved to Chicago, so he's going to finish up his term at the end of the year. So we're going to need, we're going to at least grab another drummer or two, because we're at this point, we'll be pretty piping heavy. So we're going to want to get that background back in there. So yeah, you kind of see it just in general. I think this life in general seems to have that change, but so there's no term limits. When I looked it up in the bylaws, there was no true sense to that, but that's kind of how we've tried to put the music board together, is different geographic areas, different instruments, different experiences. Ken said it the other day, he's like, we have A panel judges, B panel judges, people that aren't judges. One of the cool things we have is we have 3 wonderful, fantastic women on our music board that have led through the organization. And I think it's pretty well known that, being a woman in piping it during their lifetime was probably not the easiest thing. So to have, Liz Tubbs and Lisa Nelson and Jan Ritchie, who have been in different positions than the rest of the association at different times, but also be on the music board now. And they've, like I said, they've been pipe majors at their organization and have just a wealth of knowledge. That's been key for me, because, I can think I'm big, bad, Mr. Open player, but like I said, they actually have the working knowledge. And so they are usually always kind of school us on a few things.
That's cool. Yeah, getting a variety of backgrounds. I get what you mean. We were talking about this before we started the recording here. I said, like, people have lives outside of pipe band. It's hard to imagine, but but we do, and it's it's tough to get a balance of, even in our pipe bands, like people who are there and show up to do the work, but also like can do other things in terms of the association. I know when we talked to I seem like I'm just pitching our previous episode, so I'm sorry. But we did talk to Erica Liu also, who is we talked about kind of what is a pipe band association on an earlier episode, and she talked about that too. Like, it's kind of sometimes hard to find people, especially for like I'm sure the music board, where you want someone with a lot of good experience, and maybe as a judge or maybe has experience like that. It's like they also need to have time. So
it's true. We talk about a lot that, you don't just come on and I think people feel like we just show up and, I always say this, and I'll probably say it a couple more times, is I hate, especially for grading decisions or any other decision we make, being a judge, jury, and executioner all in one shot. That's not really what I feel comfortable with in my job. I don't feel that great about that doing this, because you have to remember, these are real people, real situations, real stories. And when we get into talking about some of the other decisions, I think it gets a little too easy to look at a spreadsheet, a number, and kind of fall into that. I mean, to give you a little background, like for my background as being an engineer, I've been in construction and design. So it's one of those things that sometimes you just got to go out and look at it. I mean, we get too easy about like, oh, let's look at Google Earth or do something like that. But we've actually, need to get out there and look at something. You got to see what the situation is. And yeah, one of my other favorite things is this is not fantasy football. It's not something that I can look up, the rumors, the rosters, every stat in the world on my smartphone at any given time. And it's so sometimes you feel like you're in that situation, but this is really our hobby and our passion, right? So you do want to help people progress and not try to be a hindrance. But I understand that, because like I said, I got to this late. I had my own issues with the music board before I got on them, or at least the grading situation. So I understand where people are coming from if they have those issues, but like any big organization, and I think probably even a band, right, even to that size, communication and information is the hardest thing for any of us to do. I work for a fairly big company, and it's just, who seems to love their bureaucracy. So it's, like I said, communication and information is the toughest thing.
Yeah. We're going to talk about next episode, so stay tuned for next week. We're going to talk about just decisions that are made. So if that's of interest to you, how the music board makes decisions, what decisions that they make on grading or whatever else, tune in next week. But we have some more fun questions. I think they're fun questions right now.
So what do you like about being on the music board?
Sure. Yeah. Because all the rest of it can be a grind, right? But it's when you're doing all this stuff and you're just going and going. But I do really appreciate the people I serve with. It's, like I said, a lot of different perspectives. I think one of the things that the music board has forced me to do, like I was traveling a lot as a grade 2 or grade 1 soloist to try to get up to open. So it was nice to kind of to travel. And I'll be quite honest, people probably think when you travel that people would be kind of maybe give you a cold shoulder when you came in, like, who's that guy? Like, completely other color kilt. We don't even know what this is. I have to be completely honest. I was so humbled by the generosity of some bands or people in general that, when I traveled. So now when I travel and I'm on the music board, people in other parts of the association do recognize me from being at the AGM or like I said, when I was shadow judging, I shadowed at Pleasanton. So there were a lot of eyeballs there and saw me shadow there. I just think it's so cool that I can go to any games. It feels like Chicago. I had people from Annapolis. Or Andrew Hoeneke, who used to be here in LA, is now living out there. You can go to a games almost anywhere and at least know somebody. And you get to have that relationship. And to talk to them about, where they came from, where in their story. And like I said, and kind of just be a part of something new, because obviously to get to go to a games, each situation, we think each one's kind of the same, but I think each games is kind of different. And the only way that happens is because you deal with the people, right? If it was just our schedule of I'm going to go do solos or I'm going to adjudicate, okay, I'm going to go to mass bands, I'm going to do we have a very rigid schedule overall. But I think the only thing that really makes it more, right, is our music and our relationships. So, because I'll admit it, going through 600 soloists and 60 bands every year when we look through the spreadsheet and do all that. And obviously we'd love to have more people involved. There's not that many tenors soloing, so you could always think about that, and kind of do it. So
We're going to this year.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're like, this is the year.
It was supposed to be the year.
But to me, I think getting to now be a little bit more in depth with people and learn their situation. I like I said, the first year I got there, I think I was put on the board in September and the AGM's in October, November, usually time period. So I was kind of walking into not really knowing what was going on. Funny story on that one. When you can't apply for an upgrade or change as a band or a soloist. I happened to be at Walt Disney World when we were starting to get all those. So I read through them and was replying to the music board, my recommendations back from the, lines in Disney World, because Lord knows you're in those for hours. So I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm just, I'll just go ahead and type these in. But yeah, no, I think it's great when I go to Pleasanton and it's just, you're at the hotel and there's a ton of people there. And I know so many people now from different parts of the association, different parts of the country, international even, right? Ken Eller or other people. And have been able to do that. I know we were talking before that, I can't remember if it's 6 or 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon for everybody, but now in the pipe band world, you're usually only, somebody like Kevin Conquest or somebody like that knows practically everybody, right? So you always have that chance to learn and meet people and what their stories are. And I think that's really what's going to keep you going. Because if you're just here to do competition music and just kind of drive, I think you're going to get burnt out or just not enjoy it after a while. You have to have something you actually enjoy about this. And because standing out in mass bands for 45 minutes in the heat is, probably not everybody's idea of fun on, multiple Saturdays during the summer, right? So you have to have something that makes it kind of fun.
Yeah, that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know why we're ending with this question. I don't want this to be negative, but what is the biggest challenge of being on the music board?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one, and it's kind of somewhere. I was talking to a couple other individuals recently about it, and because this year obviously we've had a little bit more time to do different things, but I do think that one of the challenges is that when every time I do go to a games, you are talking, like you have your own solos. I have students. I might be a judge that day. It just feels like anytime I'm not playing, there's somebody that wants to come talk to me about something, and it could be anything, right? And inevitably, you might obviously have people that really want to just talk to you, just to talk to you. But really don't have time to eat, go shop with my wife or something like that, right? It's always, it seems like I'm kind of up to something. But at the same time, I enjoy it because like one of your jobs is to listen, right, and to communicate and to learn, because bands will usually come up with something that may be troubling them or something they're thinking about. Or I know I had a soloist the one year that their solo march did go straight through. They're like, well, what do I do? Do I repeat it the part, or do I just repeat the whole tune? And and so you have something actively to kind of help that grade 4 player, feel a little bit better the next day. So that was kind of fun. But I think that's kind of the challenge is the amount of time. And like I told you, the other thing is getting the information, because I hate getting a soloist like that you just don't know any information about, right? And it comes up on their name and they're possibly up for an upgrade or downgrade, or just you don't have any information. And that troubles me. Like I said, we try to call judges or call people so we can get that information, but that most of the time that really kind of gets to me. I think that's one of those biggest challenges is like we talked about how much stuff you do. It was, like I said, it was really enjoyable to be a shadow judge of Pleasanton a couple of years ago, because the judges are kind of secluded, right? They kind of get protected because you're just so busy. So they're like, okay, we're going to get done with solos. We're going to go straight to the bands. And so you just really didn't get a chance to talk to everybody. But at dinner, it was great that my judging crew from Vancouver all said, I didn't know what I was going to do. And they're like, oh, no, you're coming to dinner with us, right? And so I got to spend more time with them and really get to know that group. So, which was both the David and Shauna Hilder, Hal Senek, June Hanley from WUSPBA. Like I said, people I wouldn't normally get a chance to interact with. But yeah, so that part was kind of nice to be a little secluded. I'll be honest about that. But I think that's kind of your biggest challenge, is that all of a sudden now when you go to a games, you are a little bit more front and center. But at the same time, I've seen people really enjoy it. If you're that kind of person that loves talking to people, love engaging, you don't think of it as work, right? It's definitely getting to be with that. And I think one of the guys that was out here, unfortunately, passed away a while ago, Skip Ruhlman, he loved doing that. In a time that we probably had a little bit of animosity between bands, he was one of those few people that could go between bands, right? He could go into your tent and you were like, what's this guy doing all that? No, Skip, come on in. How are you doing, right? And I got to see that as a teenager, and it kind of stuck with me. So I know that when you're on the music board, you're not like, everybody's like, oh no, right? It's like, we don't need that guy here, right? It's not, I understand that the animosity that may come from that. So, but like I said, I'm pretty open ears. I'm more fine to do that. But like I said, I think that's one of the challenges of being on the music board, any position, honestly, in the executive committee as well. But to kind of help you guys finish up, I mean, like we were talking about Erica Lou doing something in the association at the branch level. People have told me, like, I don't have enough time to do the music board or enough time to do it. I'm like, well, great. There's plenty of other things. There's the education council that, has started, or you can do things in your branch or do things with your band. There's plenty of opportunities. You don't have to be in a high supposed, I always term this because being like student body president, everybody thought I had a lot of power. I had no power, I had nothing, right? So this there, like we said, there's some decisions you get to help with and do all that, but believe me, it's not like our world is looking for less leaders or less people to help. So we can always do more workshops, more things if everybody just kind of chips in. And honestly, it's better if multiple bands and different people get to do that. I think like I said, I think it builds even a stronger area, or region type of thing. Because as we thought, I'm sure, I don't know if Phoenix is, or Tempe area, Colorado's not necessarily known as a Scottish stronghold, right? We're not the West Coast and have a lot of things. So everybody knows everybody in the region. So, and I kind of I think that's kind of a cool thing to go from a small region and then go to the bigger events like Winter Storm, but still come home, and do stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of nice having a small community because you know everyone, but then it's also like, oh, we need people to do things, and there's not a broad range of people to do things.
It's
So,
true. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so like I said, next week, be back. You people listening, be back here because we're going to talk about some decisions, and we all know that's what you're here for. Anyway, you saw the title of the episode, you're like, music board. Oh. So we're going to talk about why Ryan always makes us play Green Hills at every Fast Fans. No, that's a joke. That would be awful. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this show, then support us on Patreon for exclusive content as well as the video of us recording this. We'll have special exercises we'll be writing as well as tips and tricks with tenor drumming and other instruments to come. Subscribe to us on YouTube for some tenor tutorials and possibly other tutorials later on. And like us on Facebook at Podband Pipecast.